So I'm glad to see so many people on the chat, and I want to welcome you to the 2019 SEES cohort of NASA Global Observer Mosquito Habitat Mapper. And I'm Rusty Lowe. I serve as the scientist for this project. And my other people that are on our team, you can see a picture of Ms. Dorian Janney there. She works at NASA Goddard. She is a accomplished mosquito identified as a terrific educator, and she'll be helping us throughout the project. You can't see Cassie. She's so technology focused. We just see a little block. It says Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, but she'll be driving this webinar, and her in our chats because she has lots of information to share as well. So we hope to only make this a short webinar because we know it's after dinner time, people are tired, and so we're going to see if we can't do this in about half an hour. And I think when you leave this webinar, you'll still have questions, and that's going to be just great because we're going to show you where to find those answers before we stop our webinar. So without further ado, Ms. Cassie, will you show our slides for us, please? Thanks very much. So one of the things that you're going to be doing during this webinar is, taking in a little bit of information, but most importantly, think about the questions that you have. And if you go to the bottom of your Zoom interface, you'll see a place that says chat. Go ahead and click on the chat. There's a lot of people already in there telling us where they're from and what they're doing and that they're being bitten by mosquitoes. Okay, that's not a positive sign, but we're glad to hear that you have mosquitoes to identify. So go ahead and put anything you want in the chat. We'd like to hear who you are, where you are today, if you're seeing mosquitoes right now. And as we go forward, if there are questions about the things that we're going to ask you to do in this project, or questions about mosquitoes or anything else, go ahead and put those questions in the chat. And while I am talking, Dorian and Cassie will try and answer them. And hopefully we'll make this a really useful, I'm hoping 40 minutes if I'm really organized and get this all right. Okay, so what you see in this picture, besides a picture of a larva on the right, and this is what you're going to be looking at, when we look at the mosquitoes, you'll see that mosquito larvae look very different than a lot of other invertebrates. And I'm going to show you the different parts that are really important. It has a very distinct head, and that head is separated from the second section, which we call the thorax. And then the abdomen are all those little segments that you see, and they terminate in, at the very end, you have a long protrusion. It can be long and thin, or it can be a little bit bulbous shaped, but that is the siphon, and that is the air tube in which the mosquitoes breathe. So when you're encountering mosquitoes in your habitat, if you don't disturb them, they'll be hanging by that tube at the top of the water, breathing. And when they're not eating, that's what they're doing most of the time. They're hanging there, they're funneling food using those, the mustache that they have there, all those little cilia, and then they are bringing the food in and they're breathing. And it's only when they're disturbed that they actually will swim. And what you will see is that they have a very distinctive swimming style, and it's going to be pretty easy for you to learn to recognize these. The other thing that I'm showing you here, and you'll see right next to that, yes, thank you, Cassie. Would you go point to the saddle, please? So right there is the saddle. Now move that arrow down so they can see that the saddle kind of looks like a horse's saddle, and that's why we call it a saddle. On some of the mosquitoes, larvae that you're going to see, the saddle goes all the way around, and that is one feature you're going to look at. The other thing is it might just go part way around like this one. So I just wanted to show you those things now on a whole mosquito, because when we look at those things later, we'll just be looking at parts of the mosquito. Okay, if you have not already done so, we're asking you please to download the app, and you can find the app in your App Store or your Google Play Store under NASA Globe Observer or Globe Observer. And once you get that, you're going to want to register. And what I want to ask, is there anybody here on the call right now? Would you please write and see if you've had any problems registering for the app yet? I think that will be a useful thing for us to know, and we can maybe center back and try and help you with that. Okay, so let us know if anyone's having trouble. Meanwhile, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, why do we have a mission mosquito? Well, there's a really good reason, and the reason is mosquito-borne diseases are a tremendous threat to human health. And almost 1,000 people a year die from the diseases that are carried by the mosquitoes, the pathogens that are transmitted through the bite. So that's a lot of people that are impacted by these diseases. Now, up until now, we've been pretty lucky. Since the 1950s, we really haven't had very serious, too many very serious diseases of mosquitoes in our country, and they have not been endemic until very recently. It's only been in the last, I gotta calculate here. Okay, it's only been in about the last 10 to 15 years that we've had West Nile virus as a problem. And that's a very deadly disease. Some people get it and have even no symptoms, but for some people it can manifest as encephalitis and cause paralysis or death. Another problem, though, is because of our warming climate and because things are changing and because people are moving and traveling in airplanes, we are also having the influx of mosquitoes that we call invasive species. And two of those invasive species were mosquitoes that we had here prior to the 1950s, and then they were removed by DDT. But now, since the 1970s, they've come back again. And one of those is the Asian tiger mosquito. We'll be looking at that today, Aedes albopictus. Those mosquitoes are working their way north, and we have them as far north as New York right now. The other species of mosquito is the Aedes aegypti. That's called the yellow fever mosquito. That was the mosquito that we had in the US before the 1950s when we eradicated with DDT. But now they are now migrating northward, and we have them in some of our southern states, including Florida and Texas. And today I'm sitting in Oklahoma, and we're working with scientists on a project that are trying to monitor whether or not Aedes aegypti, the yellow fever mosquito, is being found here. And last year, they found one incidence of this mosquito in Oklahoma. They very much want to keep them out because these are the mosquitoes that are able to transmit very serious diseases like Zika, dengue, chikungunya, and yellow fever. And of those, only yellow fever has a vaccine. The others, we don't really have good protection for those. So the only thing you can do to protect ourselves from those diseases is finding where the mosquitoes are, remediating the sites, that means dumping out the water, and educating people about mosquitoes. And so we're doing that with this app, doing all three. So what we're trying to do here with this cohort is we asked NASA if it would be possible to see if we could work with some of the best students in the country that are in our high schools and help us to do a big campaign and do a lot of observations about mosquitoes so we can begin to build a database that can be used by our scientists in order to understand the movement of these invasive mosquitoes, where the West Nile virus is most serious from year to year. And so this is not just a science project, but it's also a project where you're going to be helping your family and your community in wellness. So that is why we have the Mosquito Habitat Mapper app. All right, let's take the next slide, please, Cassie. So I asked people if they had, if you would have a chance, if you try and use the app. I would just like to see if you have used the app. Just say yes in the chat, just so we can get some idea. We expect most people have not had an opportunity to do this yet, the reason we asked is that on this website, on this webinar, if you had problems, we could answer them for you live right now. But we're going to show you where you can answer those questions for you a little bit later. Okay, thank you, Lee. Thank you that you have actually tried it out. So maybe you have some questions for us. But using the app is very easy. Once you have it downloaded onto your mobile device, you'll see that the Globe Observer is the citizen science app for NASA, and it has 4 tools on it. The first tool is clouds. The second tool is the mosquito habitat mapper. The third one is the land cover, and the fourth one is tree height. And in this project, we're going to be focusing on the mosquito habitat mapper app, and we're also going to be asking you to use the land cover app. And we're going to talk a lot more about that later. But basically, it's super easy to use. You just open up the app by clicking on it. And then on the left, you'll see some high school students in Brazil that were actually looking for mosquitoes. They're in a bamboo forest. And if you look down to the left, you'll see that they are finding some incredibly good mosquito habitats where they cut the bamboo and then it rains. And then the mosquitoes have this very safe place to raise their young. On the right-hand side, you'll see a couple other high school students and one college student there from Brazil. They are looking in a drainage tube that's in a sidewalk. In there, once again, they found lots of mosquitoes. So you will be surprised how many places you find your immature mosquitoes. They like to find cryptic habitats, places that are a little bit out of the way. They like places that are shady. They like places where the water is still, because they want to protect their young. And they think that they have been, over time, they know that those are the places that their young are going to be largely successful and able to rear themselves to adulthood. So once you find your site, you have the opportunity, the app is going to ask you, would you take a sample? There, right there in that white measuring cup is a sample of mosquitoes that we got from that grate on the sidewalk there. And then you just take one of those mosquitoes, you can grab it with a little micro pipette, or you can use, in fact, just a spoon, grab one of those larvae, and you'll put it on a white paper plate or a china plate, but something white that is reflective is really good. You clip on the microscope, and you start taking photographs using the app. And then by using the photograph app, by comparing the photographs with the tutorial in the app, you'll be able to identify the mosquitoes. And the fourth step, which is really important, is that you want to eliminate whatever habitat is possible. And by that, I don't mean the places where a lot of mosquitoes live, your marshes, your ponds, and your lakes. Obviously, we're not asking you to eliminate those habitats, but these invasive mosquitoes that I've just been talking about, they are what we call container breeders. And they absolutely, absolutely love putting their eggs in manufactured containers by people. So you might find a McDonald's cup by the side of the road with a little water in it from rain, and you'll find mosquitoes there. You can find them, a preferred habitat because it's dark, is an old tire. Old tires are notoriously good breeding sites for mosquitoes. And here is one of our teachers from Brazil, and she's just dumped out a tire, and she's putting it in a place so that it can no longer collect water. So these are some of the things we're going to do. Here in Oklahoma, we were just talking today to some students that live out. They live out here in the country, and they've got horses, and they have stock ponds. And stock ponds are another place where we see lots of mosquitoes breeding. Now, in this case, you're not going to want to dump out the water because you want your cattle or your horses to be able to drink water, right? But there are these things called dunkers that you can buy in a store. They are impregnated with a bacterium. They call it BTI, so it's Bacillus thuringiensis, BTI. It is a bacteria that is fatal to mosquitoes, but is absolutely harmless to people and to animals. So you can put that in, for instance, I live in Colorado and I live up in the mountains. We don't have running water where I am unless we have a cistern. So I have a cistern, which is standing water in a basin. Now ours is covered. I don't have to worry about mosquitoes, but if I did, I could put one of those dunkers in there and I could have clean water to drink and no problems with mosquitoes. So it's very, very important to think about remediating your sites. I live in a very dry climate, but we still get mosquitoes because people keep their water in barrels so that they can water their gardens. Well, I don't want to tell you not to do that, but I will tell you, if you can put a screen over that, you've mitigated the habitat, and that's fantastic. So the water can go in, but the mosquitoes can't go in or out. So that's a big piece of it, is eliminating these sources of mosquito adults. Fantastic. Thank you. Cassie, can you give us the next slide, please? So now I've just introduced the steps, and this is what you're going to see in the app. You're going to download the app, and you will see the mosquito habitat mapper. It's this orange color. What you want to do is you want to make sure that in your mobile device, you turn on your locator, so that it is able to, the location is able to be sensed by your mobile device. Because if you do that, you'll be able to automatically have populated into this your latitude and your longitude. And if you're on, if you are actually on internet, you might even get a map here that will show you where you are. And with 2 fingers, you can actually move that map around. If you know that it's a little bit off by a couple meters, you can move it and put it exactly where it should be. So that data is already collected for you, and that's already important data for us. So then you're going to click next, and then you're going to describe. And when you describe, you're going to have a series of icons here, and you're going to choose one of these. Is it a still water or a pond or a wetland? Is that where you're finding your mosquitoes? Another place you can find mosquitoes, and I live right next to a creek in Boulder County in Colorado. Well, the creek won't have mosquitoes in it because mosquito larvae are very fragile and they would get beaten up by moving water. But whenever there is an overflow, there'll be ponds of water, little puddles of water alongside the creek, and that is a great place to find mosquitoes. So that is another kind of site. The third site you see are what we call the artificial containers. You'll see here a plant pot, your old McDonald cup. We found mosquitoes in something as small as a bottle cap where they have found water and they've laid their eggs, or tires. And then the last one, picture's a little hard to interpret, but that's a tree hole. And these 2 mosquitoes that I'm talking about today, the yellow fever mosquito and the Asian tiger mosquito, Aedes albopictus and Aedes aegypti, 2 of the things we're looking for in this particular exercise, they were originally tree hole mosquitoes. That means when there was a little divot in a tree, the mom would go there and they would lay their eggs there, knowing that that'd be a safe place, there'd be no fish there, probably not as many predators, and they'd be a really safe place for these mosquitoes. Well, what happened is over about 4,000 years of evolution in Africa, the Aedes aegypti mosquito came in closer and closer contact with people as during the last 10,000 years, the area that's today the Sahara was once a grassland with puddles of water everywhere. And that was about 10,000 years ago. And then up to about 7,000 years ago, what happened is the Sahara Desert began to expand. And as it expanded, those habitats that humans and mosquitoes and other animals were living in became less and less favorable. So they got pushed closer and closer together as the desert expanded, until finally these mosquitoes were found in direct proximity to people. And they were able to ascertain that, wow, people have containers, they build pots, they have baskets lined with pitch. There are all these great places for me to have my babies. I'm going to use those places as my habitat. And wow, also my blood meal is walking around on these things. So what's happened is these mosquitoes have adapted to humans. We call them anthrophilic. They love humans. They live where humans live. And as a result, they are also mosquitoes that only fly maybe 100 meters in their lifetime. So they stay close to home. This is really important because if you get rid of the sources around your home, you're going to be able to get rid of these mosquitoes that are such a danger for health. Now, some of the mosquitoes, like, for instance, saltwater mosquitoes, estuary mosquitoes, they might fly 42 miles. So you're not going to be protecting yourself from those mosquitoes, but luckily those aren't carrying disease, so you're okay. Okay, the next step is to sample and count. And to sample your mosquitoes, I'm going to show you in a minute, but we use, there's two things you can use. You can use I like to use a white measuring cup. You can also, and just skim it along the surface. You can also use a turkey baster, and you just depress the bulb, stick it in the water, and suck up the water, and you'll find your larvae and pupa in there. And then what we ask you to do is take that sample, put it on a plate, and then attach your microscope to your phone, and you can start photographing your larva. And that's the next step. And then the app will take you step by step in the identification of the mosquitoes. And in a later, in the base camp, I'm going to show you how to do that. So don't worry if we don't do that today. I just didn't want to talk for 2 hours. I wanted to get through this quickly so you can go have dinner. The last step is decommissioning the site, and that is eliminating the breeding site. You do that by dumping the water out, by adding one of those BTI dunkers if it's a stock tank, by putting screen over it if it's water that you're collecting for a garden. But the most important thing is make that water unavailable for mosquitoes wherever possible. And they ask you yes or no. So then you want to save your data and you want to download it, have it upload to the big Globe Observer database in the sky. And then all your data is shared with other scientists. And we are going to be building a phenomenal database that's going to be big and rigorous and that you can use in a scientific investigation later this summer. So that is our goal for you and our goal for our project. Okay, so I am going to now go to the next slide. And I just want to show you, one of the things we're going to ask you to do is we're going to ask you to build a mosquito trap, and we're going to ask you please to check that trap. And we're going to, so to find the trap though, it's a little bit complicated. And I want to say this is a beta app, so we already know some things we want to change, and we want to move the OVA trap right here to where it says other, right here, okay? But we have an adult mosquito trap, that's what we're going to build today. We also have some people using OVA traps. We can talk about that. That might be a fun thing for you to try. But in order to find what that container is, you'll just go to Container Artificial. When you click on that, you'll get this next screen, what is the artificial container? And it's not water storage, and it's not a discarded item or trash, but it's an other. You go into other and you scroll down and you'll see the mosquito trap that we're going to be building together in just a minute. Okay, next slide please, Cassie. Okay, so this is to let you know that we have our base camp, which we're calling SEES2019 campaign. And here are two things that I want you to know about that campaign. The first thing is that in the base camp, we have a threaded discussion and a chat. And in the chat, we've had a lot of people in there already. It's been really fantastic. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I live here. I'm interested in mosquitoes because you can say anything you want in the chat area. We also have a threaded discussion area, and you'll see there that we have some topics. You choose the topic that best describes what you want. So for instance, if you want to know, have questions about what are the assignments, what am I going to do if I go on vacation, anything that's not a science question can go into that category. If you have a mosquito larva and you don't know what it is, and you've tried and you can't key it out, if you put the pictures up, we might be able to help you. But I also want to stress that not every mosquito is going to be identifiable. So it's not necessarily human error on your part. Some of them are just kind of quirky and they don't look like they're supposed to. Others are slightly damaged because of, being handled, or perhaps a predator. So there's no harm if you're having trouble with that mosquito. Go ahead and ask us about it. And then sometimes you're going to find things that aren't mosquito larvae or pupa, and you don't know what they are. Now, I can't profess to know what all those invertebrates are. I took a class in that probably longer, maybe 20 years ago. I have a nice key, though, that I can help you with that. We don't need to know what they are, but sometimes it's very interesting. And as an example, right now, Cassie and I are in Oklahoma. We're working with a group of citizens here that are working on a science project. And we're staying in an Airbnb. And there is a planter on the front step of the Airbnb. And it's been raining a lot, as you probably have heard in the Midwest. Well, we sat down for our coffee, and we looked at the planter. This is something that Dorian writes about all the time. It happens to her. We looked there, and sure enough, we saw things wiggling around, and we thought, oh, we've got mosquitoes. So we took a sample, we looked at it under the microscope, and we didn't have an organism that had a distinct head and a distinct body. It was sort of like a continuous head and thorax. And so we knew that was actually a chironomid or a midgie. It's a different kind of fly. So you'll run into those sometimes too, and you can just, then you just say, no, it's not a mosquito, and you're done. But if you're interested, we can talk a little bit more about some of those other things you'll see under the microscope. Okay, now, the other thing I wanted you to know, and just so you can see it here, is that you'll see that in the base camp there's a calendar. And what we talk about today is being recorded, and you can always get back and see any of these recordings, any of these webinars, as well as other webinars that we'll invite you to, will all be on this calendar, and you can click on a link and then see the recording. So that's the easiest way for you to find things. So I just wanted to point that out to you. If you don't remember, that's okay. You're going to get some, we'll have patience. We'll tell you where it is. But just to let you know that all the information that you're going to want is going to be in the base camp, including asking us questions, talking to other people about your assignments, maybe working together on different kinds of research ideas. This base camp area is the area for this group of scientists to collaborate, okay? We also are going to talk about the fact that during this 10 weeks that we are doing Mission Mosquito, we're actually working on a science research project. And in order to facilitate that science research project, we have come up with 5 assignments that will sort of walk you through getting the skills that you need to actually complete a project. So the first one, which is due June 28th, this is not school. So if it's June 29th or June 27th, it's perfectly okay. And I think about 25 or 30 people have already posted, which is really exciting for me. But what you want is you're going to be able to see these assignments. And what you're going to be doing first, the first assignment, we have the assignments. I'll show you where they are in the base camp. But the first assignment is for you to introduce yourself, where you're from, what kind of mosquitoes are found where you are, if any of them are vectors of disease. And then we also ask you to read an article, a scientific article, that is somehow of interest to you or related to what you're interested in. And so when you want to find a science article, I wanted to make that more clear. You want to have articles that you're able to cite in your refereed science project. So you want to have science articles that are written and reviewed in the science community. So the best way to do that, if you don't want to go to a library and use a search engine, is just go to Google Scholar. And Google Scholar, you can type in mosquitoes, Maryland, or Aedes aegypti, the yellow fever mosquito, US. And you can find out you can think, what am I interested about mosquitoes? Write it into the search, and Google Scholar will find you a scientific paper that's been written about that. And it's a tremendous resource. I really wish I had that when I was in college. They didn't even have that when I was in college. We still had file decks, right? So that shows you how old I am. Okay, so that's the first assignment. The second assignment, we're going to ask you to do a little field experiment. It's not necessary. That's not going to be your science experiment that you're going to be writing up, but it's going to provide some data, and we're going to share that data together and learn about mosquitoes. The third assignment, we're going to have you read an article, which is, oh, thanks, Cassie. This is great. I have these all written out in great detail. So, so the second one is the scientific experiment. If you go down to the third one, we're going to have, you're going to give you some experience using some data mapping tools. We're going to connect you with a scientist that uses those tools, and we're going to give you an activity to actually do some mapping. And this is going to be the kind of thing that you're going to do in your science project if you so desire. So we're going to give you that skill. And you can even choose a data set you think might be interesting for your science project. So through these activities, if you always do something that's related to what you might want to do for your final project, you'll basically be close to done by the end of assignment 5. Assignment 4, you're going to be able to look at weather and mosquitoes, and look at some of the NASA data. We're going to help you with that. And then there is also one more assignment that is not on here yet that I'm going to put in there, which is reading a really cool article about using, and I have to say there's very, very few articles out there that does this. So this is like one of the only ones, but it came out last year, and it's about scientists that use Landsat data, which is satellite data about vegetation, and they compared that to mosquito traps they put on the ground. So that is a very good analog for what we're doing in this project. So I thought we should all read that one article and then talk about it. So that's going to be a small assignment. But then at the end, we're going to have a science symposium. It's going to be basically like a science fair. We're asking everyone who participates in this project to do an abstract, to create a poster. You put it in as a PowerPoint slide. If you want, you can do a video and talk about it. And we're going to be posting this, on the NASA Globe website. So that's going to be something I think that you might want to have even in your resume when you're applying for colleges at some point in time, perhaps. So that's going to be a pretty good thing, I think. Okay, so basically there's going to be one assignment every 2 weeks. And, I estimated, and I hope I'm right, that this project will take you about 4 hours a week. Those 4 hours will be 2 hours looking for mosquitoes, and maybe an hour reading, an hour talking to people, so it's going to be a little bit, this is not something which is a full-time project, but it is something that over the course of the summer, you can have a very excellent research project all formulated. And then I just want to say that at the end of the 10 weeks, you might have a really great idea and it's not kind of done yet. And that would be really great, because then if you are interested in doing a science fair, which is local or regional, or if you want to participate in the Globe International Virtual Science Symposium, for which there are prizes, you could also submit it to these other venues, in the spring. And so if you decide to do that, our team is going to be ready to help you throughout that process in the fall. So that's another option that I don't think most of you be interested in, but some of you that are interested in biology or ecology may very well be interested in doing that. Okay, so what I wanted to do now is just spend a few minutes and show you how to build your mosquito trap. And what we'd like you to do is build maybe 4 or 5 of these, because when you do your experiment, you're going to need 4 or 5 traps. But it's very easy to do, and I'm just going to show you. They cost virtually nothing to make. But what you need to do is you need to drink a big bottle of pop. Okay, so I actually don't like pop, so I drank mineral water, but you can use either. Then what you do is you just take a pair of scissors or a knife, and you cut the top off the bottle like this. And this is the reservoir where you're going to put the water for the trap. And this part here, the mosquito mother is going to lay her eggs. And the mosquitoes that are container breeding mosquitoes, the Aedes aegypti and the Aedes albopictus, they don't lay their eggs in rafts like most mosquitoes do. Then you have like a Culex mosquito, which is one of the very serious vectors that we have for West Nile virus, they lay their eggs in little rafts. They're hard to see with the naked eye, but you believe me, they're about 50 to 100 eggs, or they're in a little raft, and they float along, and then they will, within, I don't know, 24 to 48 hours, they'll hatch in the water, and you'll get larvae. Anopheles mosquitoes, which are the ones that carry malaria, we don't have any malaria mosquitoes in the US, although we do have some anopheles. Those mosquitoes lay eggs singly on the water. Once they're laid there, within 24 hours, you've got a larva. But these invasive mosquitoes are a little bit different, because what they do is they don't lay their eggs in the water. They lay their eggs alongside the water. And this is a beautiful evolutionary adaptation, because what the mom mosquito does is it lays it right at the edge of the water, but not in the water, in a container. Then when it rains, the water level rises, it moistens the eggs, and then the eggs fall into the water and they hatch within 24 hours. So you can imagine a mom mosquito can lay her eggs on the dry area, and the eggs can sit there for weeks, months, even a year. There's some that have been known to do more than 1 year. And then when the rain comes and they're moistened, they'll take advantage of that water and quickly get that generation in. So it's really quite amazing. All you need to do, besides cutting it, is you take a piece of sandpaper, and I'm on the road. I don't have access to my workshop that I have in the basement, but I can just use a nail file, and you just rough up the inside. And what that does is it provides a nice place for the eggs to stick. And that's also attractive to the mom mosquito. And then, and this is the important part, because we don't want you to actually create new sources where they are creating mosquitoes. This is the trap part. And what we do is we just put a piece of, this is nylon net. You can see the gauge right there. It looks like it's about the same gauge as a piece of screening. You can use something a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. I've done it with scrubbies from the old scrubby from my kitchen. I've also used potato or onion sacks, maybe doubled, as free nylon net, or you can get nylon net, in a fabric store. What you do is you just put that over the opening on the bottle, and then you just take a rubber band and you wrap the rubber band around so the nylon net is in place. You fill this with water just about halfway. You want to have the water slightly below your nylon net, but pretty close to it. And then you just put this in like this. And so what you'll see is that what you'll see here is you have a trap. So the eggs will fall into the water through the net, and they're really tiny. The eggs are really tiny. They're like grains of pepper, right? They'll fall into the net. They'll develop into larvae. But if for some reason you get sick or you forget and the mosquitoes actually hatch, the mosquitoes can't get out. So that's why this is a really great design, okay? So go ahead and drink your pop. Don't say I said so. But drink your pop and make a few of these traps for the project. Okay, great. Oh, thank you, Dorian, for saying that pop means soda. You can tell people where people are from if they say pop or soda. So go ahead in the chat if you want to tell me if it's pop or soda. You can let me know. We'll do a test there. Okay. So that is basically what we're going to be doing for the next week. Is I'd like you to build your mosquito trap, do the first assignment, and we're going to give you some materials so that you're able to actually identify your mosquitoes. I wanted to just show you once again. This is the turkey baster that we use. You can get these for $1 or $2. This one's $1 from the dollar store. But these are what we use to do our sampling. You basically find your container, you put it in there, you depress the bulb, and you put the tip. Not a very good. I'm just gonna put that back on there. But what you can do is just depress the bulb, and put the tip right at the top of the water, because what you want to do is get those mosquitoes that are hanging out using their siphons and their breathing, right? You suck those up, and then you can put them on a plate and then identify them using the Globe Observer mosquito hat mapper. Okay, so that's the first step. Now there's one more step that we're asking you all to do because you are part of our scientific community. And that is whenever you take a mosquito observation, we'd also like you to take a land cover observation. And that is the next app that we have on the Globe Observer. And the app is really easy. It's just like what I showed you with the mosquito app. It'll start out by saying, you know, latitude, longitude, map. The next one you answer a series of questions. And the questions are, is it raining? Are there puddles on the ground? Are the tree leaves out? You know, and you answer yes, no. And then it asks you to please take 6 pictures. And it even shows you in your viewfinder north, south, east, and west. So it asks you to take a picture up and a picture down, and then north, south, east, and west. And then it says, do you want to analyze these pictures? And you know what? Unless you're super interested, just say no. Because the data that you collect with those voucher photographs of the vegetation and the land cover and, you know, the pavement, whatever is around you, that information is really useful for scientists, like, to better understand these mosquito habitats. So that's really all we need. But we're going to ask you to do that every time you make a measurement. And that will really provide us with a robust data set where we can do unimaginably number of different kinds of projects with that. So what are the minimum requirements for participating in this project? And I'd say we would really like everyone to take 10 measurements a month. No, a week. 10 measurements a week. It sounds like a lot, but it really isn't, because 1 or 2 or 3 of those, or 4 or 5 of those, might be your mosquito traps. Then just take a walk, look around for standing water. Most of the places that you look where there's standing water, there will be no mosquitoes. And you can just use the app and say, here's the site. No, there's no mosquitoes. Upload your data, and then do a quick cover. And what I really want to stress, and what the scientists we're working here in Oklahoma are stressing, is that zeros are really important data, because it does us no good to know where all the mosquitoes are if we don't also know where the mosquitoes are not. And so I know there's a couple people I've been writing and talking to. One of you is from San Diego, and you're saying, we don't have wetlands here. You know, I don't expect to see mosquitoes. And that's absolutely fine. We need those data. But you can still do the project because your data is being combined with someone else's data from Oklahoma or from Texas or from Minnesota, where there are tons of mosquitoes, and you're going to have the whole data set to work with. So your contribution, even if it's only zeros all summer, is going to be very important. So I just wanted to clarify that, because there have been several questions about that. We'd like you to do 10 observations a week. At least 1 or 2 of those can be your mosquito trap. We also are asking you to do the 5 assignments and to submit a project to our virtual science fair, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. We'll do it live and online and give people a chance to share what they've learned. Let me see, what else should we be talking about? Cassie or Dorian, is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
I'm just going to add that we really are, we're very much looking forward to learning with you and from you. This is really exciting for us to have this cohort of really eager folks ready from all over, not just the United States, but also from many places around the world, jumping in and getting going. Something I want to tell you is, please do not stress over perfection. We're not looking for perfection with this. Just get in there, use the app, practice when you get the magnifier, using the magnifier, and you will do just fine. So really, really excited about working with you.
Dorian, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. I couldn't have said it any better. which is why it's so great to have Dorian on this team. We also would like to get some feedback, because this is the first time we've actually structured, and that's because the pupa, which is, like the chrysalis of a butterfly, it's the metamorphic stage, they basically tumble. During that period of time, they, just like a chrysalis of a butterfly, they don't eat. All they're doing is they are just using their energy to turn into an adult. And that's also why we do our observations on larvae, because the larvae are distinctive to genus or species. And the pupa from every mosquito kind of looks the same, like this sort of mushed up thing that's changing rapidly. So you can't identify mosquitoes using pupa. But in the app, it'll say, how many larvae do you have? I saw 7 larvae today. How many pupa? I saw 3 pupa. But did you see eggs? Yes. You don't have to count those, because it might be 100. Did you see adults? Just say yes or no. You don't have to count them, because you don't be around long enough to count the mosquitoes as you're slapping, right? Okay. I'd like to take this minute now to answer any questions that come through the chat. I know there have been some really good questions that have been answered already by Dorian and Cassie. Cassie, would you like to take a minute and show everybody the base camp and where those materials are? Okay, and while we're waiting for Cassie, there's a question here. Is there a general rule for finding potential observation sites? And the answer is yes. You will find sites where mother mosquitoes feel like their young are safe. And that's why you're not going to find them in wild water. They really like to be in places that are shady, because if it's too hot, they'll boil, they'll cook, and they'll die. So you'll find them in sort of shady places, very often in areas that are just a little bit hidden by grass or by a bush. And these are the places, incidentally, that you're going to want to put your mosquito traps too, because that's what they're looking for. Good. Does the swimming style vary across genus or species? Sadvik, that's a really great question. And the answer is apparently so. I can't tell, but I was working with a mosquito scientist in Hawaii, and he was showing me some mosquitoes, and he says, well, I know these are culex. Well, how do you know? By how they swim. They swim different than the Aedes mosquitoes. Really, how? I can't explain it. I can just see it. So apparently they do swim differently, and he has a very experienced eye. He's been doing it for 20 years, and he can see it. I've only been doing this for about 4 years, so I can't. But it's a really good question, and maybe something you'd like to research. Okay. Is there any other questions that have come up? Otherwise, Cassie, why don't you just show us really quick where we can find all the materials that we need on the SEES site.
The SEES site is organized by a chat, a threaded discussion, a calendar, docs and files, and then our to-do list. So what we have here, anytime you want to comment or get a comment back from one of us, and we really are enjoying the conversation going on, just type it in here. We reply pretty much as soon as we see the comments. And to just go back then, the threaded discussion that Rusty was talking about, where you're going to post your assignments, we've had 24 comments in here, and as you click on it, the directions or the introduction to the thread was by Rusty, and all of her comments, here's an example. She posted or added an attachment so that you could see Exploration 1, Culex Colorado study. And we've had a few people who have followed suit. So that's exactly what we're looking for. So thank you. Back to the threaded discussions, you can see how many people have participated with questions about assignments. Help me with this mosquito, it's something I don't know. Or again, on the last one, if you're going to find something interesting under your microscope, you might be surprised. Stump us. The calendar is where we post all the registration login materials for the webinars. We've updated it now to include when assignments are due. other opportunities that are available for you, webinars that you might be interested in. And the links to register are included in the notes. In the notes or description. So if it's of interest to you, other than one that starts with SEES, you're welcome to attend. In the docs and files, that's where we've loaded up. We have a monthly newsletter for our Globe Mission Mosquito project. I put a brief PowerPoint or a PDF, 2 slides on how to join Team SEES2019. And then there's a PDF on the welcome and assignments. The thing about a base camp with an upload for docs and files is that we all have the same permissions. So if you accidentally delete something from here, it's gone until we find out it's deleted and we need to update it again. You're welcome to download anything, but you can actually accidentally delete things, which is why there's 2 copies of this PDF file up here. We haven't turned on the to-dos, but you're welcome to create your own to-do to keep track of yourself. But let me back up with this calendar. You can add the calendar to your own personal calendar if it's a Google, Outlook, or an iCal. And then it just populates whatever webinars or assignments that we've put in this calendar. And we've got it all the way through the end of August, and we're looking for our symposium sometime around, I think, the 3rd week of September, 2nd or 3rd week of September. I think that's about it that I have, Rusty, for the base camp.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cassie. I think that now we've covered how to use the app. We've shown you how to build your mosquito trap. You're started on your first assignment. And I hope you now know that Cassie and I and Dorian will be, at least one of us will be looking at the base camp every single day. And so from Monday to Thursday, you can expect us to answer within 24 hours. Okay, I'm not promising for the weekend because maybe I'm not going to get a vacation this year, but I might get a weekend away. So, but Monday through Thursday, you know, if you post something, one of us is going to answer within 24 hours. And I think that's good because if you're doing a project, you don't want to wait 3 days to hear from us. So that's our promise to you. So if there's no other questions, I think that it's time for dinner or after dinner or something. But I want to thank you so much for attending this webinar and getting started on the project. And if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to contact us, you know, via email. Or if it's not personal, go ahead and put it in the chat in the SEES2019 on the base camp, because if you have that question, probably others do as well. So, anything else?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for coming today. And the next time we meet online, I'll have a lot to talk about the data that we have been collecting, about how the project's progressing. And in a week or, I'm thinking in a couple weeks, we'll have you'll have some experiences, and then we can begin to brainstorm ideas of what we might want to do for research. But in order to have a really good idea for a research project, you got to know more about the field of interest, right? And so that's why we're not jumping into that right away. We're going to have a little exploration period first. So thanks very much, and we'll see you online in the base camp. Bye.